Have you ever wondered why some people seem to succeed in everything they do while other people struggle? It's because of one thing. That thing is mindset. The way you think shapes your actions, your habits, and ultimately your success. And this is what's helped me to build a multi-7-figure organization in just under 7 years. Mindset is the foundation of it all. Mindset is crucial to success. It's crucial to business. Prior to property, I had many side hustles that I tried to turn into a business. Now, here's the thing. They all failed miserably. They all failed miserably because I failed to work on the foundation of it all. That foundation was my health, it was my mindset, and it was taking my personal development seriously. And it's no coincidence that as soon as I started to take my personal development seriously, my business skyrocketed and I was able to achieve great success. I'm in the transition right now where we're scaling massively and everything is going well because I put myself first. And here's the first mindset tip I want to give you. Your business cannot outgrow your personal identity. It can't outgrow who you are. So you've got to be obsessed with your personal development so that you can grow your business and you can grow your team, and your team will then follow the leader. Because here's the thing, you're only as good as your leader. Your team will only ever be as good as you are. It's crazy because if you look at lots of different organizations, you can clearly see the concept that you're only as good as your leader. You take, for instance, a football team, any sort of sports team actually, a school, a church, and you can have the same players but a different leader, but total different results because everyone follows a leader essentially. So it's very important that you as a leader are taking responsibility for your personal development, and only then will you achieve great success. So I got started in business because I wanted to create financial future for myself and my family. I wanted to take it into my own hands. I used to work in car sales prior to starting a property business. I used to really enjoy it actually because it taught me a lot of valuable lessons about entrepreneurship. Car sales is one of those trades where you have to do absolutely everything. You get a low basic, but you get high commissions. So what it means is that if you're not a hard worker, if you don't get up and sell cars, you're not making any money. And obviously you're there to make money. And I was in a situation where my back was against the wall every month. The basic wasn't enough to cover my bills. How crazy is that? So every month I was under a lot of pressure to ensure that I could sell enough cars to be able to make ends meet. So a lot of people wouldn't really like this level of pressure, but here's the thing, guys. This is what business is like. Business is constant pressure. So when I started and transitioned into business, I was already used to handling a level of pressure. So it made that transition a lot easier. One of the things that I learned from car sales that I was able to take into business is the power of showing up and simply doing the work. Now, here's the thing. Regardless of the way you feel, you've got to show up and do the work regardless. That is a crucial component of success. You just show up every single day. And if I was relying on my emotions, if I was relying on the way I feel, honestly, I wouldn't show up half the time. But because I've done the work on myself to build a habit, I'm able to show up every single day and do the work. So when I started in car sales, I was very wrong with who I thought would be successful. I was under the assumption that the people that were the most talented in terms of who had the most product knowledge, I thought those were the ones that would sell the most amount of cars. However, I was terribly wrong. The ones that showed up every single day, was able to do the work, didn't give up, wasn't lazy, they were the ones that were actually selling the most amount of cars. Day after day, month after month. They wasn't necessarily the most talented or had the most product knowledge. They was just willing to do the work at all costs. And that taught me a very valuable lesson that you don't need to be talented to be successful. All you need to do is have the principle of showing up daily. And that was a very valuable lesson that I've been able to take into my business world, and it's helped me massively. So 2018, I went to Miami for the first time, and honestly, I had a fantastic time there. It really taught me a lot about culture. It taught me a lot about wealth, and I was exposed to a different level of wealth. And this is why I love getting myself into different rooms and getting myself to different countries as well, because once you see something, you can't unsee it. If you hang around entrepreneurs, if you hang around billionaires and you adapt the mindset, you can't unsee it. And what happens is that energy and the mindset rubs off on you, even on a subconscious level. So I ended up going to America, networking with a lot of high net worth entrepreneurs. I came back from America, sat at my desk, and I was like, okay, I no longer want to sell cars anymore. I want to create my own business. I want to be responsible for my own financial future. That's when I started to go on YouTube, started looking at lots of different strategies, and I discovered a strategy called rent to rent, which is essentially very simple. You get a property and you rent it from a landlord on a long-term lease, and then you rent it back out to your end user. At the time, I was doing a property strategy called service accommodation. and I was also doing a property strategy called Rent to HMO. Essentially, getting the properties, splitting the rooms and renting them out to working professionals and students. So that was going really well for me. One of the first lessons I learned in entrepreneurship is the art of making fast decisions. So after 18 months of starting that business, I was in the very fortunate position that I was able to leave my job. Now, I had to do a quick analysis. One day I was sitting at work and I thought to myself, do you know what? This is actually costing me money being here. I want to be working for myself, working on my business full time, where I've got limitless opportunities and I can take care of my own financial future. So I sat down there and then and I made a quick analysis. I said to myself, what is the best case? What is the worst case? And what is the likely case of me doing this? Now, here's the thing as an entrepreneur, and when you're making any sort of decision in life, often in your mind, you can overthink things. When you overthink things, you start procrastinating, you don't make a decision. Being an entrepreneur, decision making is crucial. You need to be able to make a decision and commit to it quickly too. And often when you go through the process of writing down the best case, worst case, likely case, when you actually look at the worst case scenario, it's not actually that bad. It's not the case of I'm going to die. So in my case, the worst case was that I would fail the business. And if I failed the business, guess what? I'd just go and get another job again in the multi-trade. That was the worst case scenario for me. It wasn't the case of I was going to die. It wasn't the case of, I'm going to be homeless or anything like that. So that for me was enough to make a decision very quickly. And there and then I decided that I was going to commit and hand him a notice and take action to pursue this dream full time. But very quickly, I got taught the lesson of adaptation in business. Now, here's the thing in business, what works today may not work tomorrow. And I learned a very valuable lesson extremely quickly. So I left my job on the 28th of February 2020. 3 weeks after, COVID happened. And in COVID, the business model got wiped away from me because I was doing service accommodation overnight. Booking.com, Airbnb, they shut their calendars down. No one was allowed to travel. And unfortunately, I made the schoolboy error of not having enough bookings directly. So what that means, I was relying on all the online travel platforms at the time. So that was a lesson in itself, that you need to always take things into your own hands and not rely on partners. But at that time, it was too late. They shut their calendars down and I didn't have any bookings coming in, yet I was paying all this rent out. And then the HMOs that I had with all the students and the working professionals, the students were going back to their parents. A lot of them lived far away from the properties, so they wanted to be with their families. And then the professionals were losing their jobs, or they were getting put on furlough. So they was a bit skeptical about paying their rent. Anyway, 40% of my tenants didn't pay. So I learned a very valuable lesson of what it's like for your back to be against the wall. So very quickly, I was thinking, what am I going to do at this point? I need to make a decision. I need to pivot quickly, and that's a great entrepreneurial trait, is being able to pivot, being able to adapt. You need to understand these principles. So I had to understand and look into what the role of an entrepreneur is. So the role of an entrepreneur is, number one, create value, and number two, solve problems. Now here's the thing, the bigger the problem is, the more you'll get compensated. The more value you're creating is the more you're going to get paid. So I had to look at what problem is there right now that I could solve. Now, the problem that I could clearly see was that there was a lot of homeless people. The office was ringing all day full of homeless people wanting a house. Now, unfortunately, I didn't have the resources to be able to help these people at the time because they wouldn't pass any credit checks. So I didn't have to look into this being a business model for me. Called the councils, I was relentless. And here's the thing, guys, my back was against the wall. In business, when your back is against the wall, it makes you operate differently. It puts you under an immense amount of pressure. I was under a lot of pressure at the time because I had no income coming in. So I had to act quickly and I had to understand to pivot and adapt. I was working relentless hours and my mindset was, I'm gonna do whatever it takes to make this business work. And here's the thing, I had about 2 months worth of expenses. I was really under pressure to make something work and to be able to fill these houses again with a different tenant type. So cut a long story short, I was able to call the councils. I was able to start a social housing business called supported accommodation, which is a great business model because you're housing the homeless, you're housing those who need it most, and you're providing value and support to those tenants. We now have hundreds of rooms across the country and we generate multi-7 figures per year in revenue. Now, I'm not saying this to impress you, I'm saying this to impress upon you, trying to impact you to help you to understand that you can do the same. All you need is a vision and a relentless work ethic. So in this video, I want to give you more of an insight into my mindset and how I've got to this position that I'm currently in. So as I mentioned earlier, fast decisions. You've got to be able to make a decision and commit to it. But also, people love to work with people that can make fast decisions. So I'll give you an example. In my property business, I haven't had to go on Rightmove for at least 2 years. The reason why is because I've been able to build long-term sustainable relationships with agents. I've been able to build a great network. And the reason why people like to pass me deals is because they know that I don't mess them about. I'm able to make quick, fast decisions, and the velocity of it all is very important. Also, if you want to be successful and you want to come on top, the people that you're competing with, they're going to be on it. They're going to be living and breathing the business. They're going to be absolutely obsessed with the business. If you're taking ages to think about it and you're not making quick decisions, you're always going to fall short. Another lesson I've learned is that you have to be responsible for your own success. This is crucial for business. A lot of the time, it's very easy to point the blame. Everything that happens in my business is all my fault. I can't blame my team. I can't blame my staff. It's my fault. There's something that I could have done to prevent it. And here's the thing. At the time when you start blaming people, what that means is that you're giving the power to them. If you give the power to someone else, it means that you don't have control to be able to fix the situation. So I always put the power back in my hands and look at, well, this is what happened. This is the situation. What could have I done differently? And having this mindset enables me to be able to fix problems very quickly and keep it moving. And at the end of the day, guys, you can either have results or excuses, but never both. Next point I'd like to make is you have to be obsessed with the process, not the outcome. If you're obsessed with the outcome, what will happen is you'll always skip corners and you'll always come short. You will never be able to beat someone who is absolutely obsessed with the process. There's an entrepreneur that I love to listen to. His name's called John Maxwell. And he says, when I was goal focused, I used to always miss my goals. Now I'm growth focused, I hit goals by default. And I love this quote because it changes the mindset, it changes the perspective. You're more focused on the growth element, you're more focused on the process rather than the outcome. And because you're so tunnel vision and focused on the process, you end up hitting the goal by default. Also, when you fall in love with the process, this is what happens. Who you become will be your greatest asset, not exactly what you get. Now, let me give you an example. 6 years ago, if you said to me, Sean, can you do a public speaking engagement in front of like 10 people? I'd have been like, absolutely not. I'm too nervous. I wouldn't know what to say. My palms will be sweaty. I'll be so nervous. Now, 6 years later, I have public speaking engagements all around the UK, literally every month, because I've been able to grow through the process of building my business. And here's the thing, if you want to have more, you need to become more. Now, when you're starting a business, you have to ask yourself, does this business align with my purpose? Because I'm telling you, there will be a time where you come into hardship, you come into challenges, you come into obstacles. And what will happen during this time is the motivation that you initially had will have faded by then. Now, motivation comes in bursts. It comes in bursts usually at the start of something new or when things are going well. But when motivation fades, discipline needs to occur. This is why it's important to show up regardless of the way you feel and actually build the habits. So when that motivation fades, you can naturally show up. But here's the thing, it's very hard to build discipline if you're not actually acting within your purpose. This is why I don't really like to follow people. I like to look at what do I like doing, what aligns with my purpose. Just because someone else is doing something well and effortlessly, it's because it's written for them. What's written for them might not be necessarily written for you. So you have to look at what are your strengths, what are your goals, what is your purpose more importantly, and does that align? And also you have to ask yourself, when you come into hardship, are you going to have the discipline and resilience to be able to work through it and come out the other end? Now, I've got to be honest with you, there's many days as an entrepreneur that I will wake up and I feel like not showing up. Genuinely. But the thing is, I've been doing it over and over again and I've built myself to a stage where regardless of the way I feel, I'm able to show up anyway. So I've got myself to the stage where it doesn't actually matter how I feel because there is no correlation with the way I feel and the action that I take. And honestly guys, this is how winners win. This is how people come on top time and time again. It's not because they're gifted with some motivated personality. Everyone feels different levels of motivation, different bursts of motivations at different times. The difference is those that are willing to show up regardless are the ones that will come on top time and time again. One of the things that I love to do in my spare time is watch and study athletes. Just yesterday, I finished watching a program on Netflix called Court of Gold. I'd highly recommend it. And it's basically studying the basketball players of the Olympics. And there's a lot of correlation between athletes and business owners. Athletes have serious discipline. They're able to push themselves to their limits. They're able to work on their mindset and they have that winner's mentality. That's the same mentality that you need in business to be able to succeed. You need to be able to build resilience and discipline, which is crucial for business success. So I'd recommend building a solid morning routine. That is key. Set your day up for success. Do things that are going to generate energy, whether that's going for a walk, whether that's going to the gym, whether that's reading a book, whether that's listening to something motivational. I like doing all the above. Now, there is a myth that I want to burst on this, and it's the need to be able to get up at 5 a.m. You might have seen online people promoting that you need to be able to get up at 5 a.m. in order to be successful. That's a myth, guys. There's no need for you to get up at 5 a.m. to be successful. As an entrepreneur, you have the privilege of being able to work your own hours. Now, as long as when you're working, you're being productive, because there is a difference between being productive and being busy. People spend a lot of time doing things that are not moving the needle on their business. So as long as you're moving the needle on your business and you're actually asking yourself the question, what can I do today to move the needle on my business, rather than just being busy and procrastinating as a disguise, then you are going to be successful and you are going to get the results that you deserve. Also, you're going to be super intentional about who you surround yourself with. Your circle should be empowering you. Your circle should be motivating and inspiring you. And also, you shouldn't be surrounded with yes men. You want to be surrounded with people that actually give you constructive criticism. That is crucial, as opposed to the naysayers, negative people, people that drain your energy. You want to be with people that pour energy into you as opposed to draining it. And the saying is true, your network is your net worth. Now, one of the biggest things that's truly helped me in my business is understanding the power of managing my emotions. This is probably one of the best pieces of advice that I could give you. You've got to understand how to manage your emotions effectively, or the only thing that will happen is you will sabotage your own success. Think about it. If your emotions are all over the place, there will be opportunities in front of you, and the only thing that you'll do is sabotage it. You won't be able to condition your mind to spot opportunities if your emotions are all over the place. Also, as well, I like to look at this from a team point of view. Now, as a leader of your business, if you're a negative person, if you're very reactive and very emotional, and you have a little challenge and it affects your mood instantly, guess what happens? That same ethos and that same mentality will rub off into your team. You'll notice that they will start to adapt to the same mentality, and it also makes you unapproachable as a leader. So I'm very conscious of myself, and I try to move very logically as opposed to emotionally. Another lesson I've learned is that setbacks are feedback, not failure. This has been a very valuable lesson that I've learned in my entrepreneurial journey. And I actually learned this from reading a book called Go For No. And the slogan for this book is, yes, it's a destination, no is how you get there. I would highly recommend get this book as an entrepreneur, because it's really helped me. And what it taught me is that failure and success is the same direction. So before starting my entrepreneurial journey, I used to think that failure was left and success was right, and I was in the middle. And actually what I realized is that it's not me in the middle, it's me, then failure, and then success. Failure is a part of the process. It's a part of success, and you've got to actually fail your way to success. And I like to use the analogy of when you go to the gym. Let's say you're doing some bicep curls. You're actually seeking failure in the bicep curl. The way it works is you push yourself to your limits. You end up tearing the muscle, and it's in the repair of the muscle that the growth occurs. And it's the same with your mind, the same in business. It's in the failure, it's in the setbacks that you learn the most lessons. And what I've learned over time is that success is a lazy teacher. I mentioned earlier about in COVID when I had to pivot my business from doing service accommodation to social housing. Now, prior to COVID, I was having great success, but here's the thing, I wasn't actually learning anything in that success, because success is a lazy teacher. When I failed and I was pivoting and transitioning into social housing, I'm telling you, in that 6 months, I learned more about myself than I did in years, because there were so many lessons learned in that process, so much growth in that process. And actually, when I was able to get on the other side, I was a different person as a result. The next point I like to make is stop seeking perfection, start taking action. Now, one of my favorite quotes, if you see this quote anywhere else, guys, on the internet, you heard it here first. This is actually one of my quotes. Take massive, imperfect, relentless action. I'm gonna say that again. Take massive, imperfect, relentless action. Now, let me break that down. Take massive, the action needs to be big. There's no point of going small. Go big or go bigger. Imperfect. What is imperfect action? Now, the reason why I say imperfect is because often a lot of entrepreneurs, new and old, they like to have all their ducks in a row before they start taking the action. Things are never going to be perfect. If you wait for the perfect time, you'll be waiting forever. Take action with what you have, where you are, with who you know, and the knowledge that you have. And then relentless action. You've got to be relentless in this game. For me, there's no point of playing a game if you don't want to win the game. The whole point of playing a game is to win. There's no point of playing a game to take part. And to win a game, you have to be relentless. You've got to be obsessed. Grant Cardone says it best. He says, be obsessed or be average. I love that quote because you've really got to live and breathe your business. And here's the thing as well, people will want to work with you. People will want to do business with you if they can see the energy that you're bringing to the table. If they can say that you are truly obsessed, you're a true student to the game, they're more likely to want to work with you as opposed to someone who is a bit blasé, bit laid back, not really switched on, and not really taking that enthusiastic action that you need to be able to succeed. And also I would say on this point that speed matters much more than perfection. What I've realized from mentoring over the years is that perfection is often in disguise for procrastination, and procrastination usually 9 times out of 10 in my experience is because of a lack of clarity. Once people have clarity, they have the confidence to go out there and take that massive, imperfect, relentless action. Now guys, this is a shameless plug. I actually mentor people how to get into property. I teach people how to start and scale, specifically a temporary and emergency accommodation business. So if you are at the point where you find yourself procrastinating, you want to seek clarity, you want to achieve the results a lot quicker, and you are looking for a mentor, drop mentor in the comments and someone in the team will reach out to you. I started to notice a big difference in my business when I started to let go to grow. Now this is something that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with, because when you're working for someone else, and I struggle with this too, you're used to being leveraged. So someone else is leveraging you, you're selling your time for money. Now when you start a business, you're in a position where you should be leveraging, but often a lot of new entrepreneurs, they want to do everything themselves as opposed to leveraging. There's so many cases that shows that working harder will not necessarily get you better results. The key is working smarter, and you work smarter by leveraging, by outsourcing, by hiring. Because when you first start a business, you're doing admin, sales, marketing, accounts, you're wearing all these different hats. And what it means, because you're being pulled from pillar to post, it means that you can't be as productive as you want to be. As an entrepreneur, as a CEO of a business, you should be working on high value tasks that move the needle, and the low value tasks should be outsourced to someone else in your team. Because the key is not how many hours you're working, it's where you're working. And as I said earlier in the video, being busy doesn't necessarily mean that you're being productive. You've got to think to yourself, what can I do today to move the needle on my business? And if you ask yourself that question and you're outsourcing, you're delegating, and you're working on automation, you're going to be able to move that needle a lot quicker as opposed to trying to do everything yourself. So finally, to wrap up this video, I want to give you my top tips on how to train your mind for success. Now, the first one is positive self-talk. This is crucial for success. What you say becomes a reality, thoughts becomes things, and also it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So what I mean by that is, if you tell yourself that you can't do that, guess what? That reality will come true. If you tell yourself that no matter what happens, I'm going to succeed, I'm going to make this work, your mind will find a way, even on a subconscious level, to make it happen. When I went through my hardship back in COVID, I had to let go of my service accommodation and Patreon business and start my social housing business. Guess what? Failure was not an option for me. I told myself every single day that I will succeed and I will not be a failure. And guess what happened? I was able to come out the other end. I was able to win and come on top. My second point would be train your focus. Where focus goes, energy flows and results show. Focus on opportunities, not obstacles. Focus on things that are going to move the needle. Also, hold yourself accountable to your productivity. Don't just be busy, be productive. Focus on high value tasks. Ensure that you are automating, you're leveraging, you're outsourcing, you're hiring. This is going to be crucial to success. This is going to be crucial to be able to move the needle on your business and train your mind for success. Third thing would be visualize success. This is something that I've been amazing at doing. I remember every single day visualizing the day that I would hand in my notice at work. I used to visualize it every single day. I used to think about it all the time. And here's the thing. When you visualize it, again, as I said earlier, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Your mind has the same identical process in visualization and an actual reality. So what that means is your mind doesn't know the difference. Because your mind doesn't know the difference, it thinks it's already reality. It's almost like you're tricking your mind into success. I know it can sound silly to someone that's never done this before and never focused on visualization, but honestly, you have to visualize your success. If you can see it in your mind, you can create the reality. And once you visualize it, you'll find a way of making it happen. And also, you will condition your mind for success. And it's crazy what happens when you actually condition your mind for success. Let me give you an example. Last year, I bought a Porsche, wanted this Porsche for a very long time, and I finally was able to make it happen. Now, before I bought the Porsche, I was thinking about it and I was visualizing it on a daily basis. Now, guess what happened when I started to visualize it? My mind was conditioned to see it. So all of a sudden, I was seeing these Porsches everywhere. Not only was I seeing the Porsches everywhere, I was seeing the very specific color that I wanted. Now, here's the thing. Those Porsches were always there, guys. It's just that my mind wasn't conditioned to see it. Now, it's the same with opportunities. Once you condition your mind to spot opportunities, once you're visualizing opportunities, once you're visualizing success for yourself, what you're doing on a subconscious level is conditioning your mind to spot the opportunities. And the final thing I would say is develop a no excuses mentality. Here's the thing, guys. Success is your duty. You are responsible for your success. No one else is responsible. It's no one else's fault if you fail. It's only your fault. And you have to take the utmost responsibilities for your life and your success. So no more excuses, only action. So to conclude, the difference between winners and losers, it's not money, it's not luck, it's not talent. The only thing that's different between winners and losers is mindset. Mindset is everything. So you've got to train your mind to think like a winner, act like a winner, work like a winner, and guess what happens? You'll become a winner.